All right, well, good morning, good afternoon, I guess now. I'm Heather Wheeler, co-founder of The Crazy Coupon Lady, and of course joined by Michelle. Thank you so much. I'm excited to chat with you.
Me too. Thank you for having me.
Okay, so let's start first. I'd love to hear just about your career and like any insights that have kind of led you to this path of VP of Marketing for Mondelez.
Yeah. Firstly, hi everybody. I was going to say good morning, but it's good afternoon at this stage. I mean, I would say, look, I've been privileged enough to work on some amazing brands in my career. I've spent some time on brands like M&M's, Snickers, Twix, brands that we get to make, people smile every day. And I really believe working on brands is a privilege. And to work now on Oreo truly is, honestly, it's a dream come true for me. So the number one global cookie, excuse me, in the world, the number one cookie in the US. I think I've learned a lot along the way that's brought me here. I've learned about the power of, driving brands in culture. So we've already heard about the famous dunk in the dark. So Oreo has been doing this for a long time, and Oreo is 110 years old. So you don't get to, what has gotten us here won't always get us there. So it's our job to make sure that we're always driving cultural conversation and be in the cultural zeitgeist. And that's really the lens through which we think of as we're thinking about how do we push Oreo forward. And I think that has been probably similar in the other brands that I've worked on in my career. And there's probably also been some things that I've learned not to do. Like, in terms of great marketing, I think a great leader once said to me that if you don't get things wrong, you're not pushing enough. Because if you're always getting it right, you're being too safe. So I philosophically always try and think about that as we think about how do we continue to push Oreo, how do we drive that cultural conversation, how do we, continue to, drive the iconicity of this incredible brand that's been around for so long.
That's awesome. Okay, so let's talk about your decision to participate in the Super Bowl this year. What sort of led to that? It's been 11 years, I think, since you were there last. How did you guys decide?
Yeah, 2013 was the last time we were in the big game, and I think as we talk about, the iconic brand that Oreo is, it was really about us thinking about, this is probably the most iconic sporting event that you can show up in, and this is an incredibly iconic brand that has consumers that span every demo, right? Every age group, it's just so widely adored. So for us, it was the perfect place to bring Oreo back to as we looked at and we thought about driving it in the cultural conversation. I mean, what's magic about the big game is it's the one time of the year that, frankly, people want to see commercials, right? Like as marketers, we spend our time trying to get people to pay attention, wanting to cut through the clutter. I think I read a report just over the last few weeks that said, in terms of US Americans, 81 or 82% of them look forward to the Super Bowl, but 76% of them look forward to the ads in the Super Bowl. It's kind of mind-blowing, and as a marketer, that's why you're watching it. Yes, exactly. So it felt like the perfect time for us to come back.
That's awesome. Okay, so how did you, what were the key strategies that you're thinking about employing to maximize the impact and generate excitement? Something that was new to me, because sports marketing isn't my realm, but we've seen this shift over the years where the commercials used to be under lock and key. Nobody was releasing them, and now we're all releasing them, ahead of the game. And so how are you thinking about maximizing that impact?
I mean, you're so right. 10 years ago, it was about the big reveal, right? And it was about the surprise and delight and how much cut through you got on the day. It is, I would say, just the total opposite of that now. I mean, it's such a big investment for any brand to make. So it's really about maximizing the conversation in the build up to the big game, as well as the big game itself. So as we thought about developing a plan, you think about what are the various phases that you need to implement to drive conversation in culture, to get people's attention. So tease, reveal, release the actual spot. So I would say it's a comprehensive support plan now. that really, you know, we had our first teaser before the holidays, actually. That was the first time that we talked officially about being in the big game. And then we built from there in a fully kind of cohesive way, because consumers have changed in the last 10 years. You know, they're gone are the days where a consumer sits and their eyes are glued to the TV watching the big game. They're now on their phone watching the big game. They're tweeting about it. They're on social media. So building that fully cohesive plan is a really important part, I would say, of an overall, you know, making sure you cut through as a brand in the big game and making sure that you're in some of that cultural conversation.
And when did you guys decide that you wanted to do Super Bowl? Like, how far in advance are you thinking about that?
I mean, great question. For us, it was a conversation that we started probably last March. So it's a 10-month labour of love. And it culminates in 30 seconds on Sunday night. But it's, you know, it was, I joined the business back at the end of January last year, and I think pretty quickly we started to talk about what if we were to bring this amazing brand back to the big game. And from there, you know, we briefed our agencies in March of last year, and from there, you know, built a full kind of 360 plan. It built from there.
And what did the concept, like, what did that look like? I'm so curious.
Yeah.
How did you, you know, come up with the twist and Kris Jenner, and what did that look like?
So for us, it's really interesting. I mean, I think if you look at any brand that shows up in the big game, they show up differently, right? It's not your average ad. And as we started to think about how should Oreo show up, there was something in this idea of twisting the cookie that was really magic to us. Because we know already consumers do that with our products, right? It's a ritual. They twist, lick, and dunk. And we started to have a little bit of fun with that. We were like, what if we could use Oreo as the decision maker? So in Oreo, we always butt up against the tension. You know, we try and be playful and butt up against the tensions in adulthood that exist. And I think, you know, people are heavy. Decisions are hard. Sometimes people overthink. This was a perfect way for us to just make that a little bit easier for consumers. So that's where the twist on it idea came from. Then obviously you've seen from the spot itself, we wanted to tell a number of stories on how Oreo has been the decision maker over a course of time. So from the dawn of time to the present day. And we started to think about what were those big things that happened that we could tell stories about. And then as we talk about Oreo wanting to be in culture, you know, and you think about some of the big things that have changed culture in the last 20 years, one of those is reality TV and how it has exploded. And when we looked at that, you know, the Kardashians were such a huge trajectory in where reality TV shifted and really put it on the map. So it felt like a perfect story for us to be able to tell, to bring Kris in. But it wasn't just about being able to tell that story. I always think it's important. You have to be authentic to your brand. And for us, if there's anyone in the audience who's a fan of the Kardashian show, you'll know that actually for years, since they started their show, Oreo has been showing up there. And that is totally organic. We have not paid for that. That is not an integration. They truly are huge fans of Oreo. So for us, that made the you know, it was easy for us to make the decision then. Here was a perfect cultural moment and someone who has helped shape culture, and they adore Oreo. It was a win-win.
That's perfect.
Yeah.
I do want the trick for how the Kardashians stack the Oreos in.
You can find it on YouTube. So no joke. So Chloe does have a video on YouTube with over 7 million views of how she stacks her Oreos. Again, totally organic.
Yeah,
Totally
awesome.
organic.
I love that. Okay, so we've talked about sort of the lead up and what you've done. What are you thinking about for after the spot airs and like post Super Bowl? How long will we see that messaging? What are you thinking about like your marketing campaigns and tying in the twist on it?
Yeah, great question. Actually, what's really magic about the twist on it idea for us is this is just the start. So this is a brand new communications platform. We're launching it during the big game, but we see it has a lot of longevity. So you can expect to start to see Oreo talking about key decisions that are made through the twist of an Oreo. So you'll see it even now on online. We have a lot of influencers talking through how their day-to-day decisions are being helped through twist of an Oreo. How they, do they wear a red dress or a blue dress today? Let's twist on it. So we've really started to see that conversation in everyday decisions, which will be a really important part of how the campaign evolves. But you can imagine the fun we can have with this. So the idea for the big game, right now we're centering the idea in historical up to present day, but really get moving and shifting in eventually into day-to-day decisions is going to be such a core part and a fun part of the execution. So we see the big game as the beginning of the journey on Twist on it, and it just has so much potential. We're incredibly excited about it.
It's really fun. I'm planning to take these to the blackjack table later.
Yeah.
I'm just gonna let it help me make my decisions.
I mean, that's as good a strategy as anything, right?
Okay, so let's see, where do we want to go from here? There's so many things. When you look at like the demographics of who you're trying to reach, how did that sort of shape the ad? How did you think about, like the target demo? You said that you have, from kids all the way up. How did you think about that as you were conceptualizing and coming up with everything?
I think that's truly where the magic of a full 360 idea comes in. So you have one story that you can tell on TV that is, it's magic and fun, but then also how we personalize this twist on it idea in various channels to meet different demos. That's kind of where the magic lies. So as we're building our 360 plans and thinking about influencers, and we talk about empathy at scale a lot on Oreo, and that's really how we communicate in a relevant way to different audiences. That's where this twist on it idea becomes really magic, and that's where we'll make it very relevant to different demos, depending on if they're sports fans, or if they love to go hiking at the weekend, or if they're movie buffs. We can deliver so many messages through this. So that's really where our media strategy comes in, and developing communication that works across our media platforms is a really important part of the overall strategy as we look at the big game, but frankly, not just the big game, every year as we plan for our brand. That's the lens through which we put everything.
That's awesome.
It's so much fun, honestly, thinking about we had such fun on the shoot, seeing the work that you get to work on. We will surround our big game buy with this long form. And it's a key part of kind of helping to amplify the overall story and the arc of that story, which is Oreo has literally been around since the dawn of time, helping to make decisions. So it's a lot of fun.
Okay, last question, and then we'll, I think, open it up, because I'm sure there's lots of questions. But what do you think the crucial ingredients are for a memorable and impactful Super Bowl ad?
Great question. I think, look, if you think about ads that do well in the big game, they tend to evoke emotion, humor, they pull at the heartstrings. A lot of them have animals. People can't resist a good spot with a dog usually. They look back in time. Sometimes that really kind of helps connect. They tend to have, not all, but a high majority of them will have some sort of a celeb integration as we talk about maximizing kind of that impact. And I think what's really interesting about spots in the big game is the most important thing I think that we need to do as marketers is not only walk the line of telling a magnificent different story and having your brand show up, but it's making sure that your brand's distinctive in the ad. So how many big game ads can you all think of that you marveled at the storytelling? It was magnificent. You were like, that's amazing. What a great ad. And then you went, I don't know what brand it was for that. Right? So probably the most expensive miss you'll ever make as a marketer is you make a beautiful ad and no one can play back what the brand was. So truly being distinctive in how you activate and how your brand plays a part in that, for me, is one of the most important things that we own as marketers. And it's not always an easy thing to balance.
It's really tricky, yeah. One of my favorite Super Bowl ads of all time is the Office linebacker, where he's going through and like tackling people who are doing bad things. But I don't know the brand.
There you
Put
go.
that out, right?
Fair point. Yeah, there you go.
Couldn't tell you. So that is a key part. Okay, well shall we do some Q&A?
Hello, I'm Suryansh from essentiallysports.com, and I'm actually based out of Amsterdam. There is a reason I'm sharing that. So once I got to know in Amsterdam when I was shopping through grocery store that Oreo is actually vegan as a product.
Correct.
I don't know if that's the case in US, but as a customer who loves Oreo, I've been eating it for like 10 years probably. I was shocked that 8-10 years in, I'm getting to know that. So I'm curious as a marketer. I have not seen a campaign on that. Maybe it's my miss as a customer. But is that an intentional choice not to position it to make it a more welcoming product overall? Or how do you see the inclusive angle on a dietary perspective?
Yeah, what a great question. And yes, Oreo is vegan. Fun fact, Kim Kardashian posted this just 3 days ago to her 300 plus million followers, because it also isn't printed on pack, but it is a fun fact. So inclusivity is incredibly important to us on Oreo, and we want to be as available as we can to all consumer demos. So I would say we're very proud of the fact that Oreo is vegan. I think what we're actually working through right now is the concept of printing that on pack and going through validation to get full vegan certification, which in the US is a complex process. So I think it is actively on our list. It's not an active choice that we haven't gone there. And I would say in our bid to be as accessible as we can to consumers, it's certainly something that we want to celebrate, and we're looking to do that more.
Steven Wolf-Taneda from Televisión Univisión. I love the way you spoke about the importance of creators, and I would just love to kind of get, your point of view. One, as I think a lot of folks know, that creators are really led by diverse creators. I mean, whether it's Latino, Black, just the whole way that they're really having almost like micro or niche audiences. And so how do you kind of weave that into your whole strategy, because they actually are so critical to getting your message out at scale?
Yeah, look, I think it's, again, our job as marketers to be as representative and as and ensure that the content we put out there is as authentic as it can be. So that's where, there's so many ways you can look at that as we think of content creation, but it's an important part of how we look at our total media plan. Are we hitting the right audiences? Do we have the right content? Most importantly, is it authentic? Because the worst thing we could all do is sit here and target a demo, but have a message that's totally irrelevant for them. So that is our focus as we look to continue to be as beloved across all demos for the brand that we can be. So it's a very intentional part of our strategy, I would say. And I think it's our job as marketers to continue to push the boundaries there too.
I got a question back here. Jeff Foreman, I'm actually with Brand Innovators, so thank you for joining us.
Thanks for having me, Jeff.
I will have a comment and a question. The comment is, 37 years ago, I was 11 years old, and I still remember the marketing for Oreo Big Stuff. So congratulations to that
Job well done to that marketer.
Yeah, job well done in 1988. For you, leaning in on what Todd Kaplan was saying earlier about physical and digital, do you have strategy with teams internally about sampling, experiential, as it's a hottest marketing trend right now, right?
Yeah, great question, and I think it's something we're really looking to push forward on Oreo. So just the reality is, from a consumer perspective, those lines are they've disappeared essentially, right? And it's our job to make sure we can be as available as we possibly can. So even as we look in the build up to the big game, we have a GoPuff partnership where consumers can have our product developed within 30 minutes, should they want to twist on it. So I think this is an area that will continue to become more and more important. As a marketer, I will tell you, it's so important to help consumers feel. Fundamentally, I believe that, and that for me is where experiential, where this role of being in person, helping them experience your brand in a full 360 way versus just talking to them, is really important. And we're looking to continue to increase that as we look to connect more and more. And frankly, consumers expect more of that connection, right? It's part of the expectation they have of brands nowadays, for sure.
Hi, how you doing? I'm Evan Siegel. I'm at Throw, along with a portfolio company for Nitro Cross, Nitro Circus, and Street League Skateboarding. I had a question kind of in line with the comments about Oreos being vegan, which is, I love Oreos, of course, my favorite cookie, have always been. I'm also a huge health nut, and I feel like one of the challenges that you must face across the portfolio is the increasing awareness on health, certainly in this country. How do you kind of balance, being fun, being accessible, being for everyone, and the realities of, what America specifically is facing in terms of health crisis?
Yeah, great question. So I would say it kind of goes a little bit back to my point around we truly do try to be as inclusive as we can, and that means developing our portfolio in a way that appeals to most consumers. So in fact, just before we got on stage, we were talking about how successful gluten-free Oreo has been, as we have finally rolled out a product that tastes delicious, number one, but really obviously appeals to more than 20% of the US demo will tell you that they are gluten avoiders. So that is our job in a way, to continue to evolve our portfolio and make it as meaningful as we can, and we will continue to do that. I would say if we look at the segment that we're in snacking, Oreo's parent company, Mondelēz, does a annual State of the Nation of snacking. And even in the most recent one, it will tell you that consumers are expecting and want a moment of indulgence in their day. And that's also a really important part of life for consumers. So if you look at our category, the number one driver of purchase is taste. And consumers often feel like our treats are worth it. And I think that's the line that we walk as a treating company, is of course our job is to be that, help them decompress emotionally in a very tasty way, because no one wants a product that doesn't taste great. But then continue to develop a portfolio that makes your product proposition more and more inclusive, which we always have our eye on as we look to be relevant to more and more consumers.
Hi, I'm Chris Reinhardt. I'm at Motive. First and foremost, just want to commend you guys on that spot. I think it's great, and particularly because I love how you were able to take something very timeless, the twist dunk, or twist like and dunk, and give it new credence, give it new purpose, give it a new story to be told. But that also led me to a question about, with a product as timeless and as beloved, and maybe something the kind of thing that markets itself incredibly well and already has great penetration in the world, how much emphasis do you put every single year on trying to reinvent that story, or to break new ground with the Oreo narrative?
Great question. I would say, look, I think our job as brand owners is never to be complacent, right? I mean, I feel privileged to work on Oreo. It is this tremendous brand that's been around for 110 years, but it's also my job to make sure it's around in another 110 years. And if we sit back on our laurels and just expect that will happen, I think that's where we get a little bit caught out. So that's kind of what, where we come back to this constant conversation around making sure this amazing brand continues to be in culture, relevant, shows up differently. But most of all, we have to be authentically Oreo. Like, what's magic for me in the Twist on It ad is our product is at the front and center of that, unapologetically. It is this 110-year-old cookie, tastes amazing, twist on it, but that is what this brand is all about. In fact, if you look at distinctive assets with consumers, our cookie is the number one distinctive asset we have on Oreo. It's even more distinctive than the brand logo itself. So I think it's really important to do it in ways that feel authentic and right for the brand, but sometimes I feel like in marketing, if you start in a new brand, or there's this perpetual need to feel like you have to change things up, right? I have to bring out a brand new communications plan, or I have to do things very differently because that's how I make my mark. I actually think as marketers, the most important thing that we can do is drive consistency and iconicity. And I would say in my past life, honestly, some of the most valuable lessons I've learned is about how you continuously reinforce what's magic about a brand, both internally, because I think when you work in organizations on big brands, sometimes they lose their shine with your employees even, right? Like, your employees have been working for a brand a while and they forget how iconic these brands are. And there's sometimes, in the case of many brands that I've worked on in the past, your employees are your gateway to your customers and your consumers. So if they're not excited about your brand and how you're talking about it, no one else is going to be too. So there's that piece on leaning into what's authentically about the brand, and I think about energizing people and reminding people, old doesn't mean dusty. It doesn't mean, we should do something different. In fact, it mostly means, wow, this brand has survived that long because it's as incredible as it is, and how do we celebrate that and continue to lift it up?
Awesome. Well, thank you so much. This was really fun.
Thanks for having me.